Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. People say cliché and stereotype in every creative domain are an evil sin against art. Always. But is that always true, even if it often is? Are they subjective? Are they context dependent? Do they point to the artist that came before us? We don't know, but we have some thoughts and definitely some opinions. All right. So speaking of cliche,
Yeah.
hey Pat,
Oh, James. Yeah. Hi.
I have a question.
Okay. Shoot.
This has come up periodically, but I wonder, what do you think of cliche?
It's you mean in creative work? The
Yeah,
use of
yeah. The
cliche?
use of cliche, stereotype. I'll even throw in and get ready for this. Platitudes.
What platitudes? Is that like platypuses? Let me just look that up. What? Kidding. Okay, so I have thoughts about cliche, stereotype. I do. And I think it's not that simple. You know, when you start writing, you don't know you're using cliches necessarily. I read this essay by Zadie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that last name sounded so odd. Anyway, she's like, I think it was about cliche, and she said at one point, if you can guess the next word in a sentence, like let's say I rummaged in my, and then you turn the page, and it is purse. You gotta eradicate those, that's and the way she explained it, made perfect sense. But I think in the larger scheme of things, cliches are cliches for a reason, which I think is also a cliche, but, at this point, because I've heard it so many times, but they're a shorthand. Stereotype, I'm kind of against in some ways, but then you think about genre fiction, there's the noir. In
Yeah.
some ways, subgenres in fiction are based on stereotypes, like it's or tropes, you might say. So the happily ever after in romance, is it a stereotype or is it the character maybe is a stereotype, And then there's um the noir detective. That's sort of a stereotype. So
Mhm.
you stereotypes can be very useful if you're writing genre fiction and then you just have to make them fresh, and is that easy to do? Probably not. There's a writer, his real name, he's won the Booker Prize,
Ah,
you
ah,
know, which, as you know, was my delusional
yeah,
ambition until I got real about
yeah.
my skill set. And his he writes genre fiction under a different name. So his real name is John Banville. He's an Irish
Mhm,
novelist and
mhm.
short story writer. And he writes detective stories under the name Benjamin Black. And I was
Ah,
reading one of his detective stories, and what I felt was that the characters were cliches, but they were not described the way he used language. Like he was talking about this big, gigantic policeman, and he was sitting in a cafe or something, and he had his hand on the table, and it looked like a turnip. It was so like, and I just he didn't say it exactly like that. It was much more much better, but the idea was I've never heard anybody's hand described like that, and I could picture it immediately, one of those big
yeah,
meaty hands, and it's sort of curled
yeah.
up on the table, and it just looks like a turnip, and, so his language was fresh, but his characters were stereotypes,
Right,
and
right.
so it's to me, it's, not necessarily a bad thing to start with cliche or stereotype. Um, and I'm talking about writing, but now when I think about visual art, there are people who, and I'm not trying to put anybody down here, okay? But there's art you can see. There's a chain up here called Home Sense. Have you
Mhm.
ever, do you have that kind of thing?
Uh, not. I don't think it's called home sense, but I know what you mean.
It's
Yeah.
aligned with Winners, which is a clothing, like, discount, a brand a discount designer slash brand name clothing, chain. So, anyway, you can go into HomeSense and you can buy decor for your apartment or your house or whatever, and it looks, it looks like the houses you see in magazines and stuff to a degree, depending on what kind of magazine you're looking at.
Mhm.
Um, or, YouTubers who do home design. It's like, is it professional? Not quite, because it's not weird enough. Like, it's not
Yeah.
individual enough, but does it look nice? Yeah, it looks nice if you like that kind of thing. So there's even paintings that can be cliches, um, in their subject matter sometimes, or just in their how they're executed. It just to me, it's kind of
Yeah.
a subjective thing. How about you? What do you think?
Well, coming into this or before I started thinking about this and, I would have said never be cliche, never stereotype, right?
Mhm,
And so that would be like rules of the road. But then I started thinking about it. We started talking about it. And obviously they're hard to escape. And I think there's also, you have to maybe use a better definition of what you mean by cliche and stereotype.
mm. Maybe we should look
And
it up.
so, um, so to me, when I'm in the mode of never do it, it means, never just repeat another person's work, never be simplistic, always try and dig a little bit deeper. And I think that really speaks to what you're talking about, which with the description of you have this lunk who's kind of a stereotype of a certain type of fiction, right? Of genre fiction.
Mhm,
But this writer is digging deeper to use new language to describe his physicality and probably also giving him a little bit more layered and textured sort of qualities to the character, right?
mhm,
It's so genre fiction relies on it to a certain extent cliche and stereotype because there's an expectation that you're going to get certain things from that.
yeah,
Then that got me thinking too that, thinking about the art connection, and really all art is built on the art that's before it, even when it departs significantly, from it.
right.
And so, but it's built on something. It comes from a certain foundation that's also built on another foundation, on another foundation, on another foundation. And so there's that famous book, and I hate to use it because it's cliche, but Steal Like an Artist.
Mm,
And really what that is talking about is build the next layer, right?
mhm,
Build, add your complexity, your nuance, your uniqueness and try and I think the thing that I would shift on it is always try and think a little bit more deeply about what you want to do,
mm,
right? Um so if you're, and I also come to comedy too, right?
mhm,
So there's a lot of comedy that falls into certain kind of styles or classifications. I don't know how they, would phrase it. Like observational comedy, right?
mhm,
Would be one of them. And, and another is improv and all those kinds of things. And they're constantly taking these things and going a step further, a step further, a step further. So that's why this conversation got me to thinking it's not don't ever do them. It's just maybe have a different way of thinking about it.
Well, okay then. Um, I think the reason that people in any creative field are advised to not fall into cliche or stereotype is because they're considered oversimplified. Um, like or sometimes prejudiced, or
Right.
they're
Right.
trite
Yeah.
or hackneyed, right? So I also think, what if that's exactly what you want to do because um you want to make some money with whatever you're doing and it'll sell. So I would say, even if you don't want to make it deeper and you can use cliche and stereotype successfully, there's no moral obligation to go deeper or make it more interesting or more personal. Um, but my preference as a consumer of different art is that I don't like um it when they don't go deeper. I wouldn't buy, a painting that looks like a photocopy of somebody else's painting, or,
Yeah,
but
yeah, because it reads or it looks or it sounds, "Oh, they're just trying to do so and so,"
yeah,
right?
and, I could be wrong about what they're trying to do, or maybe they did it first and I just don't know because 'cause I'm uninformed, but if I get a vibe that it's just too cookie cutter, I don't want it, or it doesn't speak to me, I guess, and then if with comedy, I really am not into, like, comics that talk about any group. I don't know, maybe it's bro comedy or something. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I just don't, that, "Oh, my wife's such a pain in the ass," that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
doesn't, make me laugh.
yeah.
So, it's pretty subjective. Even, I mean, Louis CK, who the disgraced, comedian, he,
Yeah, he was trying to get himself up higher in the batting order.
wait a minute. He's the okay,
Yeah.
just
So listener, anybody listening to this, you can go look him up and then refer back to our discussion of baseball and how to bat higher in the batting order.
yeah, but it's complicated because he was giving himself a hand job, um,
Yeah,
in front of somebody, right?
yeah,
So is he the manager or is he the player? Anyway,
yeah. That's another segment.
or not. Where was I going with that? Oh, yeah, sometimes he made me laugh, but sometimes I'd
Yeah,
look at him and think, "What a dick," because he'd be up there on stage being what he thought was
mhm,
really funny and what the audience thought was really funny, but I would just be like, "You're an asshole." Where am I going with that? I guess it was because to me, what he was saying was hackneyed. It wasn't original and it didn't, to me, it wasn't funny. But, and
right.
I'm not a fussy person. Like, I'm not up on my high horse all the time, galloping around going, this needs to be different. Because I'm perfectly capable of changing the channel or fucking off, like I don't need to look at stuff I don't like, but uh I do sometimes do it. I don't know why.
Yeah, yeah. So, so one of these things I was just kind of thinking about too is um if you can see a piece of art and you can be like, oh, this person's trying to be so and so,
Yeah.
right? You can see a comedian doing an act and you say, oh, they're trying to be so and so. And like
Mm.
Christian Slater, this is years ago, used to get a lot of shit from people because he was basically doing Jack Nicholson when he acted, right? And you would say, no, 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 this is really me. And I at the time I found it kind of annoying because it was so Jack Nicholson, but I kind of also believe him that maybe that is him doing his thing. So, but I didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't find, there's one movie that he did that I love, and I feel like he got out of that kind of Jack Nicholson kind of way. But it then made me think that, like, with music, you can definitely hear it when somebody hasn't yet found their voice,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And you're like, oh, they're really kind of trying to be this. And then I was thinking, so you have a band like Pink Floyd, right?
Mhm.
Which has a very unique sound.
Yes, they do.
And
Yes.
so there's lots of people who've tried to mimic it, but now there's tons and tons and tons of tribute bands, right?
Yes.
And that seems to be the way the people who are like, if I like that sound so much and it's what I want to play,
Yeah.
then why am I going to try and reinvent it and copy when I can just, do this tribute band thing? And like you look at the Grateful Dead now, and it's ridiculous the number of bands that have they're named after some Grateful Dead esque way, song or in some way, and they're all playing the music and putting a little shine to it. But it's all Grateful Dead music getting played over and over by these different musicians,
Mm.
and it's like the conceit is that it's in tribute to, which is fine. I have no problem, like, go out and do that and be happy. Um, but then there's the, like, thinking about, say, getting, Pink Floyd, where it's like there's something else there, and I want to carry it forward.
Hmm.
I think there's ideas and concepts in the music and the way that they're doing something that I can use to create something different, but that's still like an artist kind of thing.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Okay.
so that's where it comes back to like maybe that sense of cliche and stereotype are kind of okay because it's about helping you. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but maybe it's about helping you sort of say, okay, so if I feel like this is the cliche, but this is something that I'm really feeling, then being able to see that and understand it is how you're then able to get a little deeper.
Hmm. Let me think about that. If we're talking about, just to go back to tribute bands, I think what they're also doing, maybe they love the music. You'd probably have to be a tribute band. But the other thing they're also doing is the advice that you give regularly, which is to capitalize on somebody else's platform. So, people are buying shows to say Brit Floyd, because they never got to see Pink Floyd, or they saw Pink Floyd in their heyday and they want to go listen to somebody play Pink Floyd at a high level,
Mhm.
live, so there's I don't feel that that is quite in the realm of cliche or stereotype. So it is, though, it is capitalizing on something that's been already invented by somebody else. Um, and for whatever reason, I think people have good reasons for most of what they do, actually. And that there's, whether it's to get an audience or to just to play stuff you love on the regular with people that you like, because that's what those tribute bands have to be able to do, is play a lot. And it's up to the consumer to decide what they wanna consume. I feel like the Christian Slater, um, Jack Nicholson thing, I'm gonna guess, okay, what your favorite. I'm just thinking of the last movie I saw with Christian Slater in it,
Mhm.
but it's an old movie, The Name of the Rose, and he's about as opposite to Jack Nicholson in that as you could ever be, because he's a young, like, I don't know, novitiate, but not in for a nun. He's getting ready to become a monk, and he's following Sean Connery around, to learn how to become a monk, and, they get embroiled in this mystery, and it's the filthiest movie you'll ever see in that.
Uh,
Have you seen it?
no, that's not the one that I was thinking of. True Romance, which
Oh
is
god, with, Jamie Lee Curtis and
no, it's Quentin Tarantino.
oh,
Uh, if you haven't seen it, highly, highly, highly recommend.
True Romance.
But it's Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Gary Oldman,
Huh,
who's in it kind of briefly, Dennis Hopper, and Christopher Walken
ah,
have one of the best scenes of I think any movie I've ever seen.
well,
It
they're
is
2 of the
so,
coolest actors. Okay, okay,
so
don't tell me
well done.
anything more.
And Brad Pitt will surprise you with what he does. So that's
Boy.
it's really a really well done movie.
Huh,
Um,
okay.
and it's based, around this um romantic entanglement between the two leads, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Trisha Arquette and Christian Slater's characters.
yeah.
Uh, and so, I've watched other movies because I'm not the kind of person who like somebody says, "Oh, I like this movie and I really would like to see it," and I'll go, "No, it's got Christian Slater." I'm not generally like that. So I've watched his stuff, but I always get like, uh, this isn't.
Yeah, okay, well, and whether, the would is it likely that a guy would imitate s somebody like Jack Nicholson?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Not
and
really. How likely is that, that it would be deliberate? But then again, he was really absolutely unlike Jack Nicholson in The Name of the Rose, so if he is,
uh
I don't know, do people change that much? Anyway, we're kinda getting off.
yeah,
Are we getting off topic?
we're a little in movie talk now.
Movie talk. Um, okay, so is there anything to the idea that certain movies are completely cliched, like, Hallmark? You ever see the Hallmark Christmas movies?
Oh, they're nightmares. Talk
Yeah.
about stereotype, platitudes, and cliche,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's what they're built on.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean Some people like them. What can
And
I
I've
say?
talked to people who write for Hallmark,
Huh.
and it's total formula.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's a bit like the movie version of a Harlequin romance.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's they sell in the billions. So there's people who just want to consume something that is familiar and comforting and they know for sure it's going to have a happy ending. And some of those Harlequins are super steamy. Like my mother-in-law, um, a very nice woman who grew up on a farm in Alberta and never swore. Her laugh was a giggle. She was super, what's the word?
great
Wholesome.
line. That's a great her laugh was a giggle. You need to
Oh,
use that.
thank you. Yeah.
You gotta write that down.
I don't have to now because we've got it on tape.
Ah,
I'll just
brilliant.
forget it like everything else we tape. So but she very wholesome woman. Uh, and she read those steamy ones where I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I have to read this in
Wow.
private because it's, you
It's
know."
that. It's wow. Wow. Brown paper cover.
The covers did not. It was if you're a Harlequin reader, they've got different lines, and,
Yeah.
like, different sort of brands, I guess, within the big brand, and there's ones that are so steamy, it's surprising the bookstore shelves aren't on fire, but I think
uh
also, have you ever walked into a bookstore and found the Harlequin section? No. They
No.
probably buy them online now, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you certainly don't see that. I guess, when you go into the big box bookstores that there's not really
Yeah,
many
and they
more.
probably sell them in, like, the Walgreens and whatnot.
Yeah. But, you go into the local one and it's gonna be a little bit more sort of highbrow kind of thing. But, and this gets into, this notion that for a long time I didn't really think about genre anything. And so there's genre fiction. I'm sure there's genre, like everything has its sort of type of genre, work
Yeah,
that
even clothing design is
yeah,
genre.
yeah. And and I will be the first to admit that I laughed at the whole stereotype and cliche of romance novels and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But then as I got
Mhm.
to know more people who read them and why they read them and what they were reading them for, and you look at who some of the writers, and there's actually a lot more there, and it makes me think more like um so there's definitely genres of music like country music that I'm not a big fan of.
Mm,
However, there are people who are so good at what they do that
mhm.
it breaks, it's good. I mean, it's just anybody would like it, and it
Yeah.
breaks out of its genre. And so I think of like Johnny Cash, right?
Yeah,
He's great,
he's
right?
awesome.
He's great. And we could probably go through like every domain of creativity or however you want to phrase it. Um, but it's true. There are people who, and I don't, I don't want to really say transcend their genre, but they're really good at doing what they do,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
people who are really comfortable they don't privilege non-genre over genre. They're very comfortable sometimes, cross-genre or also just doing whatever the fuck they feel like doing, like, I've been reading a lot of Frankenstein stories. There's all kinds of tribute they're not tributes, and it's not fan fiction. They're published stories, but, starting from the 18 like, I just read one that was written in 1889 that blew my mind, it was so good,
Right.
and, well, it was just so interesting, actually, and so even that type of story has cliché and stereotype is at its bones, it's got there's often a framing device, it starts with a letter, then there's the actual thing, ends with the letter again, or, you know, I found the man in the bar and he started telling me this, like, is it Steppenwolf? There's some Hermann Hesse novel, I think, that has that framing device like that, and the whole thing is a story as told to somebody else, and, vampire stories, those are cliches, but then you get somebody like Interview with a Vampire. I mean, that's got that
Yeah.
framing device as well. So, uh, is it a good book? I don't remember. I remember really enjoying it. So it must have been a good book.
Yeah.
I don't differentiate, I guess. And I don't want to sound like an asshole thinking I'm great because I like genre stuff, but I really love genre stuff. Maybe I am an asshole. Because it's don't answer that.
I will hide the answer in forthcoming segments.
Oh, fuck you. Very much.
That's a
Many
very genre
skanks.
go about it, right? No, people read what they read because they like it, right? And
Yeah,
so, or people do anything because they like it, and
yeah,
it's escape or entertainment, whatever it is,
yeah. Or there's something about it that really appeals to them, It's even like fashion, okay, there's the goth type stuff, and there's
Yeah.
always gonna be variations on goth, I think, in human culture because we just are a little bit fascinated with death, and, some people really are so fascinated that they have it in their jewelry and their clothes, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Edward Geary, if I'm saying it right. Um,
Gory?
Gary Gorey, is it Gorey? I always say Geary, but there's another famous Gary, so I'm probably conflating the two. But I think maybe Gorey. He was goth before there was goth, and there was, I mean, if you look at,
I would
uh,
argue that there's always been goth. Goth was
yeah.
huge
Oh,
in
I would,
Victorian
I would
time.
say, yeah, but it's, you talked. There's a certain point where goth became goth, and you see all the kids. It's like a movement, and there's a music, and there's, all this stuff around it, and it
Ah.
becomes an identity.
Oh, cool. There's actually a website called edwardgoreyhouse.org. You know how sometimes people who are famous and dead, is he dead? I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yep,
Um,
and we didn't do it.
John Irving did it.
Yeah,
Kidding, kidding. Just so John doesn't sue us, Mr.
yeah.
Irving. Um, yes, and you know how, oh, there's like a Jane Austen, a sort of foundation or whatever.
Yeah.
They have a museum, they do different things built around the Austen stuff. It's who knows what they're for. I think it's often maybe the heirs would start something like that because then it keeps their control over the work, the copyright and so on.
Mhm.
I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Well, and people flock to that stuff. If you've never
Yes.
been to an anime convention with everybody, getting dressed up and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, it's a trip. You
I'm
know,
gonna start doing headband stuff as my cliche. You know,
there you go.
it's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
19
very 20s.
that's what I was just thinking, very
Yeah,
20s.
very 20s, like almost like a cloche hat.
Oh, close encounters. I could have
Yeah.
a have a
Close
bunch of
encounters of the pet kind. There you go. There's your next genre.
close encounters. Anyway, we're okay, we're going off track here.
Yeah. Yeah. So
What did we come to with
so
this?
to reflect, well, I think that we need to not be on high horses.
Let's get off our horses immediately.
Let's saw those legs off. We've got to find those high horses
Ouch.
and shorten the legs a little bit,
Can
maybe.
we not do animal abuse on this podcast, if you don't mind?
Sure, I guess. So, all right. Well, we'll leave them to be free, but we will not get up on them and proclaim. Um,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with genre and go on. Sorry, I don't
yeah.
wanna
Well, I
hijack your
just think,
thought.
it comes back to try and be good.
Yeah,
Try and be interesting. Always be interesting. Maybe that's the motto.
I don't know, man. Interesting is so subjective.
Yeah.
One person's interesting is another person's go away, you know?
Mhm.
It's like I think I think the motto should be do whatever you want.
Yes.
That's why we're gifted underachievers.
Very libertarian.
I mean as long as it's legal and also you're not infringing on anybody else's basically, I think it's create what you want and
Yes.
also consume what you want from creators and it'll all somehow
Yeah.
work out. Like there can't be rules around it. I just don't feel like there
Yes.
can be.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And to repeat again, the addition to that is get off the high horse, and
Yeah.
stop saying what somebody else is doing isn't good, or what other people like isn't good. People
Yeah.
like what they like, and they're allowed to.
Yeah.
That's how the world turns.
Yeah. And from the perspective of, writing is the stuff I'm interested in, I would say don't rummage in your purse. Like if you find yourself being able to predict the end of a sentence that you wrote
Mhm.
that you don't remember writing or whatever, you don't know what the end is, but
Mhm.
you can predict it, um, then do something different. So I think that's what you're saying is
Yeah.
probably do something different if you find that cliches are problematic for you.
Yeah. Don't infringe copyright.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Nobody's copyrighted cliches. They're uncopyrightable.
Yeah, that's true. And, but the I guess, in a certain sense, the market is always looking for something new and interesting,
Mm,
but they also want a certain predictability.
yeah.
And so while I wouldn't say create based on what the market wants,
Yeah.
create what you would want to see.
Uh-huh.
And if there's people out there who want to see that, then, great. And hopefully you can get access to your audience and they can get access to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and appreciate, like, there's definitely bands that I do not like, but there are lots and lots and lots of people that love them. And so, great.
Yeah. To use a cliche, more power to them.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. And don't forget, we're on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else where you like to get your podcasts.